We'll go ahead and call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, City of Pearland, regular meeting, Monday, October 15th at 7:08 p.m. Let the record show that Thomas Duncan is not present. All other commissioners are present. Moving on to item 2, our consent agenda. We have a few items on the consent agenda. Consideration and possible action, letter A, approval of minutes and excused absence. Letter B, consideration possible action, final plat of Stewart Heights, section 12, plat 18-00119. Letter C, consideration and possible action, final plat of Baker's Landing Townhomes, plat 18-00106. Those are our items for the consent agenda. Do any commissioners wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval?
So move.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to new business. Item A, consideration possible action, variance from minimum lot width depth to allow platting of a new lot. This is VARP 18-00016. This is a request of Samantha Jo Vickery, Windrose Land Services, applicant on behalf of Vaquero Kirby Partners LP, owner, for approval of a variance from section 16.4.1C of the Land Use and Urban Development Code, ordinance number 509H, to allow platting of a lot that will have a lot depth of 0 feet at the east corner of the lot located within the Shadow Creek Ranch planned unit development commercial on 0.5980 acres of land. This is the north side of Broadway, about 200 feet east of Kirby Drive. I hear a motion for approval. I have a motion from Laney and a second from Darrell. We have staff report.
Yes, sir. This variance would result in a minor plat that would allow the creation of 2 lots, but the lot under question will be a triangular-shaped lot. It will meet all of it'll meet the minimum lot area required for the zoning district. The minimum lot width will also be met. The only exception would be the lot depth of 0 feet, which would be at the east corner of the property. Basically, this variance would create allow the creation of a plat that would conform to all the standards of a minor plat. However, except for the minimum lot depth at the east end of the property. This next slide shows a map of the area that would be covered by the future minor plat. And this final slide here shows the 2 properties created. The variance under review this evening will be for the lot that is the far east lot, or the lot on the right side of the map shown in this slide. And that concludes my staff presentation. Well, we do recommend approval of this variance.
I'll start with Mary.
I don't have a problem with it. I think we ought to go ahead and approve it.
Mr. Wicker?
If I can interject, because this is a variance request, in a variance, it's a public hearing as part of the request, and you would typically ask the applicant if they have a presentation, and if there's anybody from the audience who'd like to speak for or against the item before the Planning and Zoning Commission weighs in.
Thank you. So we've heard staff report. Is the applicant here and wish to speak? If you would, just state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I guess I'm Samantha tonight. I'm Andrew from Windrose Land Services. Obviously, Samantha's not here. I'm filling in for her. I was deployed for 6 months on the border, so she was taking my place a little bit while I was gone. It's pretty straightforward. This is obviously an irregularly shaped lot. It was currently platted before as one singular lot, so this development has already been constructed. The Take 5 oil change is the use that will be on the easternmost half of the lot. And the developer's intent, I think, from the beginning was to really have the strip center, which includes the Dickies right there and the Potbelly, separate from the Take 5 oil change. And obviously, it's such a peculiar shaped lot, you can't get the minimum lot depth right there because of the triangular, like it pinches down on the east side. But we are providing all the lot area, all the frontage requirements, and the parking is adequate for the use that's on the site. I don't know if you guys are familiar, if y'all are familiar with the Take 5 concept, that people stay in their vehicle as the people get the oil changed. So there shouldn't be that much need for parking, but we do provide the parking on the site, as you can see from the site plan. So we believe the variance is warranted, and I'm making myself available if you have any questions.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and ask if there is anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item. Please come forward. For the second time, anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this item? And for the third time, is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, move on to commissioners' questions, comments. I think we heard from Mary already, Mr. Wicker.
The only comments that I would have is, of course, I'm trying to get used to going through all this agenda material, and I'm very familiar with maps and plats and this sort of thing, but I swear I can't read any of this. Even in the big scale, it doesn't make sense. It's just black blurs. Is there any way that we can get better graphics?
I know what you're saying, sir. Like, normally you'd like to see graphics so you can read them in the packet. I actually have a site plan that you all can have if you want to look at this. I know you don't want to make your decision without seeing what's on there. Would you like to look at it?
I'm prepared to make a decision without it, but I'm just saying at some point, I'd like to, when we're discussing this stuff, I'd like to be able to see what we're talking about, and the graphics are very poor, in my opinion.
Mr. Wicker, if you work with staff, if you meet with staff prior to the next meeting, we can either, I think we might have a workaround for you. There might be two different ways to access it and then different ways to zoom in so that if there's a note in there that you've got a concern about, or so that you could read the notes to determine whether you'd be concerned or not. We think we have different ways to get the information to you to help.
I think on this one we just had a technical difficulty because this one's been hard to read for a couple meetings now. Move on, Delaney. No comment? Troy? Darrell? And I don't have any comments on this one either. Any further comments? All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion passes 5-1. Moving on to letter B, also a variance. Consideration and possible action approval of the creation of two irregular shaped lots, VARP 18-00018. This is a request of Josh Kester, applicant on behalf of Yanfu Management LLC for the approval of a variance permitted by section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code Ordinance number 2000T to allow for approval of the creation of two irregular shaped lots within the R1 single-family zoning district described 1401 Paul Drive. I hear a motion for approval. I have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Yes, sir. On this item, the applicant has sent in a request to postpone this item to the November 5th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I believe this was postponed from our last.
Yes, sir, it was.
And that was the commission that chose to postpone.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Not a 30-day limit on it. Comes into play on it.
Does the commission have to grant the request?
No, sir. It's within the commission's discretion as to whether to grant the request or not. However, I think it's incumbent to point out to the commission that I think there were citizens who had showed up tonight. And while we might be able to summarize what their proposed statements were, I think after seeing that the item posted online had been requested, they might have chosen to not participate in the meeting at this time. I didn't speak to the citizens, so I'm going to verify that.
Yes, sir,
With,
that's true.
Oh,
What's the reason for the applicant's postponement?
The applicant wishes to present more information to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which would include a site plan to be included with the materials submitted with the staff report, and also the applicant did state that they were trying to secure permission that they would be able to build a driveway in the future on the pipeline that runs through the property.
The citizens that were going to come speak to it, do you know, what have you received? For, against, more questions? What was the breakdown, please?
They had serious concerns about the increase in density of development in the neighborhood, and also the pipeline that runs through the property.
Was there anyone, had you received anything, any letters or calls for it?
No, sir. No, ma'am.
Thank you.
so I guess we would need a motion to postpone.
If you're inclined to postpone it, yes, sir.
The only reason I would see to postpone it is to hear the residents. But if it's all negative, I mean, I've read it. I know how I'm going to vote. I think they would be pleased with the way that I'm going to vote. So it's up to y'all if y'all want to postpone it or not.
I think we should give the applicant another opportunity before we vote on it to bring the other items that you mentioned.
Is that a motion?
Well, we've got a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion to postpone it.
I'll second it.
Is that a motion to, I guess technicality, is that a motion to amend the original?
No, it wouldn't be a motion to amend. It would just be the motion to postpone, but it would need to be clarified. Under the Roberts Rules of Order, if you postpone it and you don't put a indefinite date, it actually tables the item indefinitely, and it can't come back. So what I would recommend is if you do want the applicant to have an opportunity to come back, postpone it until a date certain, which would be the next regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, or until November 5th, I think, is what was stated inside the applicant's request.
I'll make a motion to postpone the meeting to the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
And that would be October,
Be November 5th.
November 5th is the next one? Okay, yes, sir. That'll work.
So we have a motion to postpone to November 5th, and we have a second from Mary. All those in favor of postponement, signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion to postpone is denied 2-4. Is there any further discussion on this item?
Again, it is a variance request, and as a variance request, there should be a public hearing, getting a staff report, and then if anybody happens to still be in the audience who did want to speak to this, as opposed to the people we know that chose to leave after they heard that the applicant had requested a postponement, giving them an opportunity to voice their opinion.
Yes, we're going
Excuse me, I'd like to make one comment. I know we voted already, but if the citizens left, and why not give the applicant another opportunity if the citizens want to voice their opinion about it?
That's why I asked what kind of concerns they had received for or against.
Well, my take on it is this. The applicant should be here while the item's here in front of this commission. If anything's going to be acted on, they should be here to speak for it. I've read this document now both times that it's come before us, the application. I have my opinion of where this is going to go. I wanted to vote on it last time. I wish they would have stuck around or were told to stick around because the item is still on our agenda. So
Even if the people are requesting for it to be postponed, they could be here.
I think at this point, we're delving into another one of those technical rules of Robert's Rules of Order where people don't like when I give too much information because, well, it becomes super technical. But Commissioner Prati, I think what you're getting at this point is you'd like to reconsider the postponement, which would be a motion to reconsider. A motion to reconsider can only be made by somebody who is in the affirmative voting for the item is to where it is now. So because you were in the negative on that, you would not be able to make a motion to reconsider. It would have to be one of the, I think it was 4 commissioner members who had voted to not postpone the item.
Well, let me see if I can persuade the other commissioners.
In order to persuade one of the commissioners to do that, there would have to be a live motion on the table for you to discuss at that. So the only live motion on the table right now is the actual item, the variance request, and that item, we're still in the agenda portion of staff report.
I understand.
the chair will make a motion to reconsider postponement.
Yes, sir. You could second a motion under those circumstances. You just can't present the motion under those circumstances.
I second the motion.
We have a motion to reconsider postponement and a second. Is there any discussion?
I really would like to not do it. I really think that we need to give the applicant a fair hearing. And I wish they had pulled it ahead of time instead of waiting until the last minute.
My take on it is staff's going to be wrapped up with this no matter what. So it's going to come back to us again either way we look at it. So I truly, let's reconsider the postponement for November 5th. We had a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of postponement to November 5th, signify by raise your right hand. All those opposed? We have a tie.
So
The motion's denied 3-3.
then motion would be denied 3-3 because it takes an affirmative action by a majority of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the live motion on the table is still the variance request itself. We're in the agenda portion for staff presentation.
Thank you.
Again, this request is for approval of irregular shaped lots. The general location is 1401 Paul Drive. The purpose is to create 2 lots that would result in a second single-family home built on the property. The criteria for approval, generally, it is consistent with the intent and applicant of the zoning district as far as the lot area, width, and depth of the property is concerned. However, staff is very concerned that the proposed variance would be out of character of the adjacent development in the neighborhood, because even though the neighborhood has its current zoning, it would have the effect of doubling the density of residential in the neighborhood, as far as doubling the density of residential development. As far as meeting the standards of the zoning district, it would be an irregular shaped lot. This property is shown on this map at 1401 Paul Street. It's on the corner of Paul Drive and K Avenue. This next slide shows the plat with the 2 lots as conceived by the applicant. And as you can see by lot 1, there is that 50-foot wide pipeline easement that would take up most of the front yard of the proposed lot. And that concludes my staff presentation.
Thank you. I don't believe the applicant's here, but I'll ask anyway if the applicant has a presentation. Hearing none, move on to comments. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? For the second time, is there anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? And for the third time, is anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further commission discussion, questions, comments? I'll start with Darrell.
Yeah, I've got one thing to address. Usually we voted on some things like this in the past, and I always try to take the consideration of the people that went out there and bought homes, and they've done a really good job over there of taking care of their neighborhood. I live right next, just in the next neighborhood over. They've already got some flooding problems and stuff over there, and I hate to sound like Chicken Little that the sky's falling, but they go in there and we do this lot, and there's several other lots in there could be done the same thing to, and before you know it, you'd have more of a high density area in there with more traffic than what they desire, and they've already get a lot of outside traffic because it's a back way to cut through to get over to 2351 in Friendswood and such. But those people bought wanting to live in a subdivision that had big lots, and they didn't want to be crowded in with a bunch of real small lots like in a subdivision. I chose to live in a subdivision. I didn't want a big yard to take care of. These people did, and they've done a really good job of keeping up their neighborhood. I see no reason to want to change it in just because somebody wants to sit there and make a little bit more money. So I'm dead set against it, no matter when it's addressed to us or whatever. Yeah, I'm always going to be against it. So, thank you.
Troy.
Yes, I just believe in giving everyone a fair opportunity. We're here to protect the citizens, and so we need to protect the people that present as applicants too. So we need to give everybody a fair shot. And if they, we vote on it and they lose on it, then that's fine. But we need to give everybody a fair shot.
Laney? Mr. Wicker?
I've got a couple of comments. This subdivision was developed, I think, back in 1960, and it's pretty much built out. There's a few lots that still remain in there. I guess this is one of them. But it was large lot throughout, and to try to take one of the large lots and break it into two, which they're trying to do, to me creates some problems with the people who do live there. The pipeline goes across the property and probably takes up a third of it, maybe a fourth, I don't know, somewhere in a third to a fourth of the property. It's got the issue, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the ordinance passed back in 1986 having to do with building adjacent to pipelines, requiring a 100-foot setback. If I read it right, it says that the building inspection department has to have certain documents presented from the people who own or they're going to build on the lot that have to say they accept the liability of building closer than 100 foot to those pipeline easements. Now, I don't know if this is still in effect. I looked at the ordinance today, and I don't see where it's been taken out, but it was adopted, I think, back in 1987 for the principal reason of safety to adjacent pipelines. And I know there was at the time it was adopted, there was people trying to build adjacent to a pipeline, didn't like the 100-foot setback. It wasn't done because it was just an arbitrary amount. It was done because of a disaster in the Pearland area, not in Pearland proper, but in the Pearland area where several people were killed as a result of a pipeline explosion. And all of this to me comes into play. I just don't see that I could vote to allow it to be platted into two lots. I guess it would have, because it was originally platted, if I'm understanding the regulations on plats, it would have to be replatted, not platted, but replatted from one lot into two lots. So I would be against it.
Star?
I'm against it because for two reasons. It was originally platted to have large lots, and that's what the people out there have bought their homes for the large lots. The other thing is that pipeline is just really, when you look at it, you wonder where they can build anything that would be not too close to the pipeline. So we also have a letter from one of the residents that is against it. So we've had some response from the other residents out there. I just the pipeline is really, I wouldn't want to buy it, either lot.
Thank you. And likewise, I'm opposed. I think it's been around here enough to hear me go on about pipelines. We've made some strides in developers that have done right around pipelines, and this development is kind of one of those older ones where pipelines crisscross it and they put homes all in between where the pipelines weren't. In this case, this would be putting a residential home kind of on the other side of it, and I understand the applicant probably was coming back to get an easement from the owner to go across the pipeline. I'm just adamantly opposed to any development, whether it's a driveway, sidewalk, anything on an existing pipeline easement, especially one of the older ones. In the newer developments, we've put 20-foot setbacks on the side of the easement, on top of the easement, which gives some distance. In this case, there's no distance because the home's going to be basically cornered by the pipeline. So that's the reason I'm opposed to it. If this was just a residential lot without anything around it, no easements, no issues, I would probably be for it. But in this case, I can't support it. No matter what they come back with, I'd still be opposed to it. And that's why I wanted to vote on it last time. I have no further comments. Anyone else?
Just for clarification, how close, with the replat, how close would it be to the pipeline? I just want to know.
The replat would have the same dimensions as shown on here on this map.
Can you give me the actual?
Without a building permit for the proposed home on Lot 1, we wouldn't be able to do that. But looking at Lot 1, I think we might be able to zoom in for the density you think we could zoom in for the density of where that pipeline is and subtract that from the
satellite picture would show, because the existing house on Lot 2, if you duplicated that house on Lot 1, you could see how close it would be to the easement.
But because Lot 2 faces a different street,
Right,
and it's
Lot
not
2.
a corner street with two front lots,
Right.
they might not put it at the same level on that lot line, and that's why I'm wondering if we can get a general estimation of how far from the pipeline it would have to be.
And I guess Darrell can speak to this. He works for a pipeline company or did. Putting things on pipeline easements is a bad deal for developments. Fences, trees, sidewalks, roads, anything is a bad situation to be in, because that puts people doing things on top of a pipeline easement, and that's not what you want to have. Just opposed to it. It's an easy vote for me.
Well, since you brought it up, but as far as the pipelines and stuff, there's certain criteria that the pipelines don't allow you to do. Number one, they don't allow you to dig on it. They don't allow you to put heavy equipment on it. There's certain things that they're going to come back and tell you they can't do. Now, putting a driveway over it, they'll allow you to do that. But somebody that goes out there and drives a big truck over there on the grass and stuff, they're going to be opposed to that. It's not a good idea. They've gone through there and completely rehabbed that pipeline that's in there. They've completely redone it. There's safety things that's been put in place to try to mitigate some of this stuff. But as Daniel says, in any amount of setback we have is not going to help anybody on that lot. It's just simple as that. If it blows up, and God forbid that it would ever happen, there's going to be damage, property damage. So, that's really the only thing that I can say to it. There is no state setback in the state of Texas. Everything that's as far as setbacks and stuff is all done within the cities and such. And usually what it is it's just building setbacks. There's not anything to do with the property. Because there's no way for those developers and stuff to go back and get anything out of that. As far as there's no money to be had, it's just lost revenue to them. So the only thing they get is the easement that goes through there. So that's all I've got.
To answer the question about distances on because of the angle of the pipeline itself, the shortest distance along that property line that's shown is measured as 165 feet for the proposed property line. That would create a setback of about 55 feet from the front property line. As if you move to the area of the pipeline that is along the measurement that is shown as 161.81 feet, that pipeline is about pretty close to the halfway point between the front property line and the back property line. So probably about 80 feet.
So it'd be set back anywhere from 80 feet to 110 feet.
Is there an amount, Mr. Wicker said 100 feet, is that right for Pearland? Is there an amount?
I know that we had a set distance from pipelines in the subdivision ordinance when it was originally adopted. When the subdivision ordinance was codified and incorporated into the Uniform Development Code, I don't believe we had a specific amount set, but I'll verify that with planning if they recall that. I would have imagined it's in Chapter 4 of the UDC.
There's no reference in the UDC to a setback.
Correct. And I think that I think the Planning and Zoning Commission had talked about making a proposed change to that, I want to guess 4 years ago. And I don't recall that a discussion
Made no move.
resulting in a change.
I remember there was discussion about creating setbacks from pipelines, but I don't think it ever was resolved.
Well, we obviously don't have it because we've got homes 16 feet from pipelines right now. So, I mean,
One issue with the proposed Lot 1 is that if a house is built on that lot, it will not enjoy the same front yard setbacks as the neighbors, because this slide doesn't show it, but in the underlying plat, most of the pipeline is is configured so that the center line of the pipeline is the rear property line of a lot of the properties in the neighborhood, to where each owner has only about 25 feet of the pipeline easement in their backyard.
Well, if we put something like that in place, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. So how can we address setbacks from pipelines?
Later on the agenda, you'll have UDC revisions coming with the last round from the massage parlors. I think we'll follow a similar procedure and revisit the discussion of pipelines with commissioner's request to do so.
There is, the reference in the UDC gives this commission the duty to change, I'd have to go to that section, the minimum lot width and depth.
Right. So there is a section in lot determination and regulation of size which discusses extra depth and width in certain cases. That particular section, 3.2.14.2, discusses when a lot backs up to an oil or gas pipeline, not when it is bisected by. So, unfortunately, with the way that it's
I think when Martin and I had reviewed that earlier, there was something similar for something to adjacent to a pipeline, and then there's something at the rear setback. It did not anticipate a pipeline running through the middle of a lot.
Well, to refresh everybody's memory, from 4 years ago, we attempted to get a 50-foot setback. We didn't get any traction on that. The commission at the time was opposed, even though we had some voices from the audience and a couple of agenda items that said definitely that needs to happen, but it went nowhere. I think, Darrell, you were new to the commission at the time when that first come across, so I would like to see it come back because I think some people could weigh in. We're going to have this more in undeveloped portions of the city, and we need to define it clearer, or we need to remove the section altogether. One of the two.
I think for the purpose of today, we've got a variance request, and we need to make sure that we focus on what the criteria is for the variance request. One of those criteria is whether or not it changes the character of the neighborhood. A good number of commissioners have suggested something like that, but that's what's on tonight's agenda right now is the variance request.
Have any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the table for approval, correct?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Did you vote? So we had
So it
Five-
sounds like
0,
you're
4.
abstaining then, Commissioner Pradia? Okay, thank you.
We had 0, 4, 5 against, and 1 abstain. Motion is denied 0 to 5. Okay, moving on to item C, consideration possible action replat of Longwood Park, Section 1, replat of Lot 5, Block 7, Plat 18-00089. This is a request of Josh Kester, applicant on behalf of Yenfu Management LLC, owner, for the approval of a replat of Longwood Park, Section 1, replat Lot 5, Block 7, creating 2 residential lots on 0.6068 acres of land located at 14. Wait a second.
That's what we just did.
This is the replat.
The meeting, or the issue in front of you was the variance request. You needed the variance request in order to do the replat. This is the replat.
We need to.
And you would
So because the variance request was denied, your decision on this is going to be bound by that prior action because it will not meet the requirements.
Again, general location is 1401 Paul Drive. Do you hear a motion for approval?
Second.
Have a motion from Laney, a second from Mary. We have staff report.
Again, this request is for a replat of Longwood Park, Section 1, replat of Lot 5, Block 7, to create 2 lots in the neighborhood. And staff does not recommend approval of this item since the variance to create the irregular lots has been denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Any commissioners have questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? And Troy, you're going to abstain?
Yes, I'm abstaining.
We have 0 for, 5 against, 1 abstain. Troy? Motion's denied, 0 to 5. Moving on to item D, consideration possible action, zone change application number zone 18-00019. This is a request to Stream Realty, applicant represented by Andrew Allemond of Windrose Land Services on behalf of SR Pearland owner for approval of a change in zoning classification of single-family residential R2 to planned development PD zoning district on approximately 8.495 acres of land. This is north of Pearland Parkway across from Shallow Creek Drive. I hear a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Have a motion and a second. Have staff report.
This was the rezoning for that small 2,500 square foot piece of property. Maintains all of the conditions as the previous plan development had.
Thank you.
No additional.
Commissioners have any additional comments, concerns, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes 6-0. Okay, moving on to item 4, discussion items. Number 1, we have UDC text amendment T29. This is a request of the City of Pearland for proposed amendments to Unified Development Code Ordinance Number 2000T to permit massage parlors only by a conditional use permit CUP and to allow additional tree credits to provide commercial developers relief from tree mitigation. Staff report.
Yes, sir. So we've had discussion about both of these items, but they were kind of in a conceptual form. I wanted to bring back the actual text, what this would look like, so that way y'all could have additional feedback if you chose to give guidance or if you have issues with either set of text. We can handle them one at a time, and but that's generally what how we wanted to reform this discussion as.
So we'll cover the land use matrix for massage parlors first. I guess I should ask if so. It looks like we have one person that wishes to speak on this topic, Joe Madison. If you could step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record, and we'll give you about 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Joseph Madison. I live at 3435 Sheldon Drive, Pearland, Texas. And just to clarify, I'm here on behalf of representing a group called STOP. So do I have 5 minutes or 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
It's 3 minutes? Okay. Thank you. So a few months ago, I addressed this commission specifically about this topic, and it's been something that's been going on and on. And at that time, I provided the commission, among other things, with a map of 4 known brothels here in Pearland, brothels that have been vetted not just by visits, but by actual consumers who have gone online and spoken specifically about the services that are provided there. Since that time, and specifically this last month, we've seen our neighbors to the north, City of Houston, dealing with sex robot brothel threats. I represent an organization, I'm actually a co-director of Love People Not Pixels. Our focus is to reduce demand for sex buying. We spoke to Mayor Turner and the City Council to help them refine some of their ordinance languages. We then, the next week, which was last week, went and spoke to Judge Ed Emmett and the Commissioner's Court there to help them refine ordinance as well. The reason that refinement was necessary is because, just like with many things, as these things develop, the existing code or verbiage isn't adequate to address it specifically. So I'm here today in that vein to formally call for a defined revision of the UDC, the land use matrix, to define these massage brothels, because my understanding is that there is not a definition currently for them. And along with that definition, I'm calling for a conditional use permit that includes verbiage that addresses a lot of the gray area that these places use to open up. Some of that would include blacked out windows, buzzer access doors, locked interior doors, things of that nature. And with that conditional use permit, the development of that language, I'd call for City Council, for the City of Pearland to work with an advisory committee, one made up of nonprofit organizations that specialize in fighting human trafficking, local business owners, up to and including legitimate massage business owners, the private citizens, and even police department for their advice on what that would look like. That's not uncommon. In fact, we're working with Harris County and now with Houston to do exactly that, to help them understand this more in depth, since they have a general understanding, but they don't know specifically. I'm calling for that. There'd be a few benefits to this, but specifically when we talk about law enforcement, this would maximize the resources for law enforcement as well, in that if we're able to proactively put permits in place or a conditional use permit that would identify these places that have so many commonalities, like the ones I listed, we could have a fire marshal walk in. We could have a private citizen walk in that observed some of these things where they were in infraction, reported to the police, and then that would be something they could go in under nuisance abatement, among other things, to take a look at. It would help maximize the resource of the police, which taxpayers know is a finite resource. Also county, it would allow the county and the constable's office as well some assistance in that regard. And then finally, as we look at this, it's not just a Pearland thing. We're the fastest growing community, third fastest growing community in America. We have an opportunity to lead here. This is the first steps of leading in that way. That leadership could extend then into Brazoria County, and then beyond that into Texas, because Texas, unfortunately, is known as the capital state for sexual exploitation. And our neighbors just up north is the #1 city for that in America. Are there any other questions?
Thank you for your comments. We have one more speaker, Buck Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. My name is Buck Stevens, 4701 West Orange, Pearland, Texas. A lot of you know me. I'm also the elected constable here in this precinct in Pearland, one of 3 constables that cover this area. I'm also on recently been put on a board of directors for an organization called United Front for a Coalition here in Brazoria County. It's a spinoff from the Unbound Coalition up in Houston and across the state of Texas, actually nationwide. But we're also diligently working on an effort to try to help any way we can, and would be interested in any type of committee that was suggested by the previous speaker. If nothing else, this particular proposal that's before you tonight, I'd like to see at least a couple of things put in place. So one of the other things I wanted to add to the previous speaker's list of items, I guess, if you will, is a time, operation times, beginning and ending and et cetera. There's nothing I mean, we set the pace for the city. We need to step up and make sure that happens. But even on the nomenclature that you have in front of you, I noticed that description is a facility which offers a massage of the body. And I would like to suggest that be a massage of any part of the body, because it almost leads one to believe that it's an entire body massage. And I think there are some facilities out there that claim in their name of their facility that it's only one part of the body they're massaging, like the foot or the hand or the what have you. And then other things happen that we probably shouldn't have happened. But I think, unfortunately, if you just say body in itself, I think that it could be construed as that, and I think you have a little bit more teeth in that. And I appreciate the commission stepping forward and looking into this, and anything I can do to help, let me know.
Thank you for your comments. So with that, I guess the forum here is for the commission to give some feedback to staff over the way this is worded, the way they've added the conditional use for GB and GC. I believe that's what we requested earlier. A definition. This is a good start for a definition, in my opinion. Like Mr. Stevens said, I think it needs to be an all-encompassing descriptor of any part of the body. The question I had for staff and legal is the wording on does not regulate chiropractic services or those provided by a licensed practitioner, such as sports medicine. Just so that doesn't include a licensed massage therapist, because I would want the description of the use to be any massage other than I'm open for that, but medical related massage. I don't know the correct terminology.
It'd be medically prescribed, I thought.
I think we know what we want, and that's the massage parlor, the massage spa, anywhere where massage is done outside of the medical or chiropractic field. If we can define that, we certainly don't want to put any undue strain on the medical that already have all the training and permits and what have you for doing that. The question I had for staff, another one is, since we put a CUP in GB and GC, typically we don't have a list of conditional uses for any of our conditional use permit required items. We have some listed in the land use matrix. Some of them get quite detailed when you look at even things like veterinary services. There's paragraph or two underneath each category for that. And if it requires a CUP, I believe with that CUP, we should be able to give the applicants a list of conditions that are standard for that. Whether that's defined in the UDC or defined, and I don't know where that's defined, whether it's in this land use matrix and that's where we put it, or if it's another function of council's CUP process.
So typically with, for instance, gas stations, we have a list of things that, because we've seen a few of them come through, we tell them any of your utility, like the ice machine, has to be underneath the canopy. It can't be a standalone facility. If you're going to have the tire air station, it has to be, by the main building. Those sorts of conditions we've just kind of naturally progressed and grown, and those are kept at a staff level. What we've put into the Unified Development Code for microbrewery, micro winery, micro distillery, those are conditions that we've memorialized for everyone. So based on this, I was looking at it as more of a staff level, keep those conditions rolling and, develop them rather than putting them in a hard and fast defined area.
I think, where I'm coming from is that if somebody comes and wants to open a massage business in the city, they have a document to look at that tells them what hurdles they have to jump to do that. If we're concerned about hours of operation, transparency on the windows, no locked or buzzer entrances, things that are things on radar for the places that might not operate under the law, then those should be listed. I think in this land use might be a good place to do it. I don't know. But what I'm concerned about is that we don't define it in either here or another place. And this goes before our CUP process. We all discuss it, and then there's no additional condition. There's no conditions to use. It just gets approved. I'm just trying to say that we need to make it clear what that business needs to do, what the conditions are before they come to Pearland to open up, so they know, so that all the businesses are treated the same. Instead of it coming before the council and whoever's in those seats at the time decides this is the condition we need to put on it tonight. I don't think that's fair to a business because they don't know what they're coming into until they get to council. So if we have these concerns, we should put them in the CUP or in the UDC. I think here, given some of the things we do on other uses, no outside storage, there's all kinds of conditions we put on other land uses that we could do the same here and list the handful of items that are of concern. And I really would like to hear those handful of items come from a committee or from others as more than just this commission when we work this through the public hearing process. Yeah, go ahead.
On the, is it just general business and is it just GB and GC?
That's what's marked here.
Yeah, because what about office and professional? Because I know that some of the foot spas have to be in places that are zoned that. A couple of the foot spas for sure are. So could we add it to that as well?
If you were to add it, then it would allow them to expand into places where OP, as
They're
it
there
stands
now.
now,
This would only
address future uses. This would not retroactively apply to massage parlors that were opened in accordance with law at the time.
So they could only come to these places from here on out.
Correct.
There's nothing, the ones that are already there, there's nothing you can do.
But if they close, they cannot open back up.
Is there anything, since there's nothing we can do about even adding guidelines to the windows, the hours of operation, nothing?
No, ma'am. Well, I don't want to say no, absolutely not. You would do a different regulatory framework if you were to adopt that. So instead of using it with a conditional use permit and a land use ordinance, you would go through and have a regulatory licensing type permit that everybody has to obtain, and then through the use of that license, you could do that. There are benefits of doing that. There are detriments to doing that. I think that what we've seen throughout different communities, they have a different approach on that, and I'm not here to say what is the better way to do that. I don't think that I'm the qualified expert. But based on the materials that were presented in past meetings, Houston is different. And even though Houston is different, they've adopted something away from the regulatory framework for licenses because they don't have land use and they don't have zoning the way that we have zoning and land uses. So when we've had this discussion in the past, the Planning and Zoning Commission landed on using this with CUPs, knowing that that was going to be the way to stop future uses of these. And then if there are if there are entities in town that the police department thinks is having illegal massage activities, then with a certain number of convictions or complaints or whatever it might be, we would use what other jurisdictions use in regards to nuisance abatement to get orders to make those places comply with the laws and not do illegal operations.
Darrell?
I don't know if this, look, I'm all for us putting CUPs and doing certain things as far as any of this stuff going forward and stuff. But, and I'm very passionate. I'm just as passionate about it as Daniel and as Laney and the rest of them are about it. But there's limited amount, as far as I'm concerned. We've got to be careful. There's a limited amount that the government can do. And we can, and I'm all for putting hours restrictions and working with these other organizations and coming up with different things in order to make it tougher on them and stuff. But if you're really passionate about it, then join the stop. Go out there and join Joe. Go out there and join Unbound. Join those people and get involved in it. Because that's the only way that you're really going to make a sound and a very, very impactful way on these things. The way that I feel about it is if you go out there and we can all gripe from up here, but unless we're willing to put skin in the game and go out there. And I know that we've all got lives. I know Daniel's got his hands full with his archery and stuff, and Laney's got kids at home and in college. So, and I understand that there's a limited amount of time, but still, go out there and get involved in those type of things. It's really scary if you go to those meetings and you listen to what Joe and them have to say. If you listen to what Kerry Taylor has to say, it is very, very scary what's going on. But the only way that you're going to make a difference is for each one of us to get involved in it outside of this council.
Ms. Wickers?
I have a couple of comments. I don't know. I know over in the Clear Lake area, there is a place on Egret Bay or one of those streets that has a school where they teach massage and that sort of thing. I don't know if there's any license or certification, but look like one way we could approach it is to set up minimum license or certification requirements that you don't open unless your personnel has that sort of thing. Another possibility would be, you're dealing with human flesh and that sort of thing. If you had some sort of health certificate through the health department, is if there's any criteria that they had to meet to make sure that they were safe as far as health is concerned. And then a third area, and one that I don't know if it would even work, if it would be something that we could even deal in, and that is I go to a chiropractor very regularly. There's one over by HEB that you buy a tag and you can go in for, I don't know, $25 or $30 a time. You buy a tag with 6 adjustments on it, and you can go in and get an adjustment. And I do that quite regularly. But one of the things that I've noticed in some of the chiropractors over the last few years that I've been to is rather than having adjustment rooms that are individual rooms where they can shut the door and, make it private, which seems to be a possibility for some of these massage parlors, is require that the activity be held in an open room where I know and I don't know if y'all been to this chiropractor practice over there, but they have several adjustment tables all in the same room, and there's no privacy. You don't need privacy for that sort of thing. I wouldn't think if you go to the mall and they have massage booths in the middle of the mall, it's right out in the open, and maybe that's a possibility that we could look at. I don't know that much about the massage end of it, but I would think that certification or license would be a good start. See if we can get the health department involved like they do with food and that sort of thing. And if we could control the design layout of a facility, look at open areas. So that's all I have.
Mary, do you have anything to add?
No.
You can always ask somebody to come back up and speak more if you want, but as far as the 3 minutes go, I wasn't keeping the timer.
Oh, I wouldn't keep it. Let's go through the commissioners, and then I'll give you an additional couple minutes to speak, because we may have some other questions.
Well, I think we need to put as much, I like the idea of putting the restrictions into either the UDC or the matrix use so that we don't have to go through the conditions every time we vote on something. I like that because they should all be the same. They shouldn't change for one person over another. I think we need to take a look at that and just add a little bit of verbiage in there, particularly the clear windows and unlocked doors and hours of operation. Those kinds of things can be added in here.
So I'll just add, I want to make sure that we stay inside of our box with the UDC. The council definitely has the ability to do other things. We asked that as a minimum that the use be defined in the land use matrix, which it has not been for as long as the UDC's been in existence. So that's a good thing because they're no longer, massages won't be lumped in with beauty salons or such, and they'll be segregated under their own use. The conditional use in GBGC, I have no issue with that. That looks like a good spot for them. How we handle that, I think that's a topic. Staff's heard our comments as far as what we can do within the UDC and what we can do within the land use matrix definitions. I think that's something as a whole in the process we need to look at. I think everybody seems to be on the same page that they agree that certain things need to be looked at. Also don't want to make it too hard for legit business to come in and do that as well. So we need to hear from those folks under the public hearing when this goes forward in the very near future, hopefully. We'll get some of those comments and build this out to be something that's decent. I think we're on the right track. Mr. Madison, if you want to take your remaining minute and a half, or
I do think that adding certification and licensing requirements is not a problem because legitimate massage businesses have those.
Yeah, I won't speak for a couple of people that have legitimate massage parlors here, businesses here in town, but they would echo those sentiments. Just a couple things that came up. Staying within the purview of what we're talking about today, the reason the focus on conditional use permits, I think, is a primary deterrent for these businesses of opening is because it creates a collaboration in the community. One that has been done in townships, in unincorporated areas, in cities throughout the U.S. to really address this issue. Licensure is important. It is. However, you can put a license on the wall, and if somebody comes in and asks, is this a legitimate license? Is it dated? Is it certified by the state of Texas? Yes. However, they can still have illicit sexual business happening in the place where they just say, oh, well, that's not the licensed person. That she's a contractor, and then they can blame it on the person. So these people are very adept at getting around it. If we have something like a conditional use permit, if we have something where it's in the UDC, then we take that out of their hands, that gamesmanship out of their hands, and we've seen it work with other communities in a way that gives the protection of the legitimate business owners. That's the other balance that we have to strike. We want to make sure that we're not handcuffing legitimate businesses. We want to have that growth and development here in Pearland. We want it to be a place that's favorable for these businesses, and it's very easy to tell what's legitimate and what's not. We've become experts at that. So the last thing I'll just reiterate is if we can collaborate on what this looks like from a planning and zoning and also from a city council and city level, there are experts that are ready to be a part of the verbiage development and also some of the language that would put that barrier up for these legitimate businesses.
thank you. I think the staff got enough comments there to move forward whenever we.
I'll draft something up, and do y'all want to see it again before?
I personally don't think we need to see it again in the commission. That I think we've given enough input that we can move it forward through whatever that process is to get it to the next step.
Okay.
The next step would be the public hearing. Is that correct, Mark?
Correct. It would be scheduled for a joint public hearing.
As it's a joint public hearing, planning staff isn't able to speak to city council's calendar.
So we have one more item. If I remember correctly, we discussed this.
Correct. So this has to do with the,
I was just going to say that I think we left and we were going to hear from our urban forester at one point.
correct.
Kind of describe some of the process to us.
I was going to bring him out for the actual joint public hearing, but this is the text that he provided that I believe Jerry and Darren have worked together crafting, these text amendments. Again, this gives the 25% credit for the additional inches that are provided, and provides for the second function of the tree credits. So that way, they get an additional edge on their mitigation. And then it also adds in pine trees to be counted towards preserved trees. All of this was included within your agenda packets.
So some of the feedback I've heard on the tree mitigation is that it's very costly. There's some trade-offs on both sides. I'm going to yield to our urban forester and our parks department and our Keep Pearland Beautiful reps when this goes through the public hearing process to come forward and give their opinions. I can definitely see both sides of change here. Again, everybody together will make this what's right. Whether we need to delete totally some portions or change, I think we're on the right path to making some adjustments. Darrell, you have any comments? Troy? Laney? Right. Oh, we have no comments on this one.
All right. Well, I believe the computer has decided that it's time, considering it keeps wanting to drop my connection.
That was
those were the only two. The tree credits and the massage parlor were the only two that I had.
Thank y'all for putting that together. Commissioner's activity report. Anyone? Nope. Our next meeting, November 5th. As soon as you know, if you can't make it, just let staff know. Any other comments? Anything else? Hearing none, we'll adjourn at 8:22.